It looks like Cam Ward will be going number one in the NFL draft, but which team at the top is the best fit? We'll debate on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the Madman, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the Data Queen, Michelle Majuk. On today's episode, we're going to do a little mini mock draft for you guys. We're going to go through Cam Ward's best fit at pick number 1. Should the Browns then go quarterback as well? What should the Giants do if no quarterbacks are available? The Patriots add Stefon Diggs. Does that change their draft plans? And would the Jacksonville Jaguars actually draft Ashton Jeanty at number 5? So much to discuss. Before we get into it, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Michelle, I'm obviously in the trenches on this one with my Tennessee Titans sitting number 1 in the draft. After the pro day, it seems very likely the Titans will stick and pick at number 1 and take Cam Ward. But from an outside perspective here, out of the Giants, the Browns, and the Titans, who do you think would be the best fit for Cam Ward?
I think easily the Giants would be, because they would give him Malik Neighbors, right? And that would be huge. I just think the Giants would offer him a good spot. I think Brian Dable is also a better coach than Brian Callahan. I don't think
not Kevin Stefanski, though, right?
Not better than him, no.
No.
But I was going to say that it's just with the Titans, who's he going to throw to? Calvin Ridley? Like, that's your wide receiver 1. And there's really not many other options there, with Treylon Burks being a bust. They added Van Jefferson, fine. And then it's a bunch of no names. They don't like Chig Okonkwo's fine. I guess they've been working on their offensive line, but this feels very much like when the Patriots took Drake May, right? It just, and that still was a good pick by them. I'm excited to see what Drake May can do, but they put him into a situation where it was very hard to succeed in year 1. And I think that's exactly what Cam Ward would be put into if he goes to the Titans.
No, I think you're 100% right about that. You have Malik Neighbors, you have Andrew Thomas. I agree with all of that. One thing I would say is I want to look at it from a different perspective. The Titans are in a much more winnable division. If you go to the NFC East with the Giants, you got to contend with Philly and now Jaden Daniels' Commanders team. You know, you go to the AFC North, you got Lamar and Joe Burrow. I think that CJ Stroud is a good player, and I think that CJ Stroud is a better prospect than Cam Ward was coming out of college. I think that Trevor Lawrence was a better prospect as well. I don't think Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones were a better prospect than Cam Ward, though, in my opinion. So I think that there is a chance, you know, prospect this, prospect that, but there's a chance that Cam Ward immediately could be the best quarterback in the AFC South and have the opportunity to dominate there. And I would go back and look at Joe Burrow with the Bengals, which is a Brian Callahan, you know, connection there. And Burrow didn't have any wide receivers to throw to because AJ Green was on the outs, but they drafted T. Higgins that year. And then they got Jamar Chase the next year. And I don't think that the Tennessee Titans, even with Cam Ward having a decent year, are going to have a super high up draft pick in terms of being low in the order. They're going to be high up in the order, probably top 10 still. So I think with the division, although the Titans are a worse roster than the other two and have worse coaching than the Browns specifically, I think that the environment of being in that division and with what the Titans could do going forward still makes it a good landing spot for Cam Ward.
That's true. I'll say I'm just bitter right now that the Giants went with Russell Wilson, because I play fantasy football. I love Malik Neighbors, and he's going to ruin him a little bit. Yep. And I don't know if Cam Ward, a rookie coming in, would have been able to feed him the ball as much as we wanted and be productive there. But it just felt like more hope. So I would have loved to see the Giants move up for Cam Ward. I think that would have been a great fit. The Browns is just a terrible fit for any rookie to go to, any rookie quarterback, right? Until they figure out this Deshaun Watson and get him out, like until they finally are able to get away from Deshaun Watson, I just don't think going into that building for a rookie is going to be successful. Also, their playmakers are lacking right now. And then they traded for Kenny Pickett too. So then would they compete with Kenny Pickett? I don't know. But the Browns would easily be the worst landing spot.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I'll be honest with you, Deshaun Watson, I guess I've just kind of factored out of my mind. I don't know that he ever plays another snap for the Browns. Like, I think he'll probably be out the whole season after a second Achilles tear. They'll probably go ahead and take the dead cap hit after the season. And I think with that, you probably need to have a rookie quarterback or a cheap quarterback because you're going to eat so much money from your Deshaun Watson mistake. That's why if we pencil in Cam Ward going number 1 overall, the Titans, because it just doesn't seem like they're going to pull back, I would probably throw Shedeur Sanders in here at number 2 to the Cleveland Browns. And, my guy Spencer from Locked On Browns talked about that possibility here recently.
It's one thing if Shedeur doesn't go at 2 and then he like drops out of the top 10 or something. But if he's good enough to go at 3, he's good enough to go at 2 also. Like both those teams, the Browns and the Giants, are quarterback needy teams. And I've been saying for a long time now, Shedeur fits Kevin Stefanski's system. He's accurate. He can process well. Like, I think he would do very, very well in Stefanski's offense. I wholeheartedly believe that. In the same way, I think, Cam is going to be great for certain reasons. I think Shedeur can be great for his own reasons and some of the things that he brings to the table. So I don't understand how anybody who is talking through these drafts and then has Shedeur Sanders going 3rd wouldn't consider him going 2nd to the Browns. And maybe it's just changing it up for the sake of changing it up because these mock drafts can get so benign if you do the same thing over and over again. But if he's good enough to go at 3, he's certainly good enough to go at 2.
I mean, I agree with the general philosophy there. And I think, like I said, with the Browns having to pay so much for Watson and him not being a factor, I think that makes them more likely to go rookie QB. I just don't know for certain if they're going to go rookie QB at number 2. I don't know about that. So I'll say Shedeur Sanders, but if it's not Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward's off the board, who would you put with the Cleveland Browns?
It's just hard to see them pass up on Abdul Carter. Putting Carter with Myles Garrett, I mean, that would be pretty sick, right? That's a scary defensive line right there. The rookie quarterback is not going to help you win it all this year. I just don't think so. The Browns just have themselves into a bad situation right now. So grab the best player in the draft, probably, right? In Abdul Carter. You're going to tank again. And then maybe you can land one of the elite quarterbacks if there's one that comes out next year. Like if Arch Manning does come out, you can land them instead of maybe reaching on a Shedeur Sanders or a Cam Ward. I just think that would be the better route for them, to be patient for one more year. Just live with your bad decisions for one more year. Get out of Deshaun Watson somehow, even if you just have to release him and eat all that money, and then go for your quarterback next year.
Well, I think we're hearing, I'll say, there are some rumors out there, pure speculation, that the Browns may be looking at Kirk Cousins and that there may have even been some talks. So if you're going to pass on a quarterback early, whether we like it or not, trading for Kirk Cousins with like a late, round draft pick, Kevin Stefanski has proven that he can get the best out of veteran quarterbacks and do enough to have winning records. And he did work with Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. So if they do pass on Shedeur Sanders, I can't see them rolling with Kenny Pickett only. So I would probably say that they would be more likely to trade for Kirk Cousins at that point if they do go Abdul Carter.
The Cousins and Watson would take up like their entire cap space. How are they going to afford both those guys?
Yeah, it would be crazy. It would definitely make it hard to stack the rest of the roster, but that's the position that they put themselves in. So if these things happen, what does it mean for the New York Giants? They added Russell Wilson. So are they out on QB now? We'll discuss on today's edition of Locked On NFL. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. The college basketball tournament is ongoing, folks. The action is here. It's about to kick off again for this weekend. Can you imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling that energy of the crowd, witnessing the unforgettable moments? There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. And look, getting tickets to the college basketball tournament shouldn't be super stressful. And that's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Game Time has the best features. Trust me, I've bought all kinds of tickets off Game Time, especially Game Time Picks that curates the best deals for you and gets you the best value on tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater. You also get a panoramic view from your seat, no surprise fees at checkout, and a lowest price guarantee. You're not going to get all of that anywhere else in the industry. Make sure that you take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Michelle, let's continue today's mini mock draft edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. We talked about the first two picks. I have it going Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders right now, but Michelle makes a pretty good point about Cam Ward, then Abdul Carter. But what would happen after that? We obviously go to the New York Giants at number 3. And while the Giants have been attached to quarterbacks throughout the process, potential trades, all of that, now they've signed Russell Wilson, and they already had Jameis Winston. So that leads us to believe, obviously, that they'll be passing on quarterback. And if they're passing on quarterback, and let's say the Browns do take Shedeur Sanders, like I presented, most people would say, oh, Travis Hunter. You have Kayvon Thibodeau, you have Brian Burns. But my girl Patricia Traina, the GOAT, talked on Locked On Giants about how she thinks they'd still go Abdul Carter.
Folks, there's a reason why in my mock draft, I went for Abdul Carter. All right. I have not gotten the impression since the combine. I always tell you, let's get to the combine and we'll see what news comes out of it, what information comes. The vibe I was getting from the combine coverage was that the Giants were not really, what's the word I want? That they were lukewarm about the quarterback class this year. All right. So I got the impression that going quarterback at 3 was not necessarily the direction the Giants were going to go. But that said, they had to do their due diligence. They had to go to the pro days. They had the top 30 visits. They did all the scouting work. They have to do due diligence. All right. For them to say, we're not going to, go for a quarterback. Well, you don't know unless you do your due diligence. So coming out of the combine, initially I thought, okay, at 3, if he's on the board, Travis Hunter. I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that, but the reason why I have been picking Abdul Carter, the Giants have been putting more of an emphasis on building up the fronts, the pit guys, the trenches.
And Abdul Carter is the trenches. And here's one thing. Like I said, you could look at it and say, oh, they just traded for Brian Burns. They have Kayvon Thibodeau. But Kayvon Thibodeau has been somewhat of a disappointment after being the number 5 overall pick, and he's on the last year of his contract. And the Giants may not want to roll with him again the year after. So you bring in Abdul Carter now, who might be the best player in the draft, and you say, hey, we have, a plethora of edge rushers, but now we can maybe trade Kayvon Thibodeau and get some mid-round draft compensation back. We could let him walk and get a comp pick after the year and still feel like we upgraded that position. So that's why I am not putting Abdul Carter with the Giants, but it is hard to – actually, I will. I'll take Patricia's advice. I'll go Ward, Sanders, Carter here and trust the insider.
Yeah, I think if Abdul Carter makes it to them at 3 and the 2 quarterbacks go off the board, then the Giants have to get Carter. Like, you got to take best player available, best player in the draft. Like, you got to go with him. And, like, it's not like they're rolling with TJ Watt and Myles Garrett out there, right? Yes, they have good edge rushers, but you can always use more. That's the way they have to go. Now, I had Abdul Carter going to the Browns. So
So what do they do if he's not there?
So I have them going with a quarterback still, even though they signed Russell Wilson, Shedeur Sanders. Like I don't get the Russell Wilson signing in the slightest. It's just so silly. They might just be so worried they can't land Ward and maybe they don't like Sanders. Yeah. So they felt the need to do this. And I know they also signed Jameis Winston, but Jameis Winston's contract is 2-year, $8 million, right? Like they can get rid of him if they want to, that he could be the emergency quarterback if they want him to be. And then maybe also if they do like Shedeur Sanders, right, and they don't think they can get Cam Ward, maybe they want him to learn behind Russell Wilson for a year or half a year too. So I still think they should go the rookie quarterback route. I think it'd be really, really silly of them not to, just because of Russell Wilson, who is a very below average quarterback at this time in his career. I still think they go quarterback at number 3 if either of those two are sitting there in Ward or Sanders.
And when you think about job preservation, having that quarterback on the bench to say, hey, we wanted the quarterback to sit. Yes, we needed to win games, but we prioritized building up this young quarterback. And then the young quarterback comes in. Now, instead of maybe needing 8 to 9 wins to save your job, if you can get 4 or 5 wins and get hot with a rookie quarterback at the end of the year and then be like, look, he wasn't ready yet. If he were ready the whole year, we would have played him and we would have won 8 to 9 games. But once he was ready, we went to him. Now, what I would say about Shedeur Sanders in New York that I'm worried about is I think the concerns about his arm are a bit over-exaggerated to where I don't think that he's not going to be able to Joe Burrow has bottom 5 arm strength in the NFL. And he can win with his mind and the progressions and anticipation. And Shedeur Sanders could do some of that stuff too. But in New York, outdoors, you're not getting a dome. Is his arm going to be able to cut through that weather in the big moments late in the season? I know that sounds kind of silly, but that's something to think about. And with Cleveland's building a new stadium. They're probably going to build a dome on the lake. So I don't think that's as much a concern with Cleveland, because I do believe they'll have a new stadium soon with a dome. Same thing with Tennessee. They're going to have a new stadium soon with a dome. That's confirmed. New York, they just got their new stadium built however long ago it was. It ain't coming soon. So that is somewhat of a concern. But I agree with you. They have to find a way to save their jobs. And having a backup who's your rookie, who you can bring in midway through the season if it doesn't go well with Wilson, that's a big advantage. But moving to pick number 4, Stefon Diggs goes to the New England Patriots. Number 1, bit of an overpay, in my opinion. Mike Vrabel getting desperate to get wins right away instead of building it slow. But with May on his rookie deal, maybe they can afford it. Do you think that if the board went this way, as we have portrayed it, 2 quarterbacks and Abdul Carter and some combination, what do you think the Patriots do at number 4? And would they be scared off Travis Hunter at wide receiver because they just signed Stefon Diggs?
Yeah, what's interesting about this is I still think they should go Travis Hunter for the wide, to add a wide receiver for Drake May. He definitely needs more weapons. Stefon Diggs might not even be ready by week 1. I mean, he tore his ACL in late October. So who even knows when he's going to be ready? They still definitely need weapons. I'm just worried now that they're not going to go wide receiver 4th overall. And this is why they added Diggs, so they can go tackle. But they definitely need to add weapons. The thing with Travis Hunter, right, is if a team does want to use him as a corner and a wide receiver, the Patriots really don't need a corner right now. That's actually one spot they're kind of good at. Yeah. And then they also signed Carlton Davis in free agency. So they're pretty good there. So maybe they look, I have them taking the tackle, Amand, how do you say his name? Membo. I think that their line was so bad last year, right? They had the 2nd worst pass blocking grade per PFF. They definitely need to upgrade tackle. Vidarian Lowe, they could easily upgrade there. So I have them taking him.
And I know some people are listening right now going, but wait a minute, Will Campbell is the top offensive lineman. But I've watched Mike Vrabel, and Mike Vrabel wants bigger offensive tackles with length and size. Think Taylor Lewan, Jack Conklin. That's what he's going for. Dennis Kelly was 6'8". That's what Mike Vrabel wants out of his offensive tackles, is length and size. And Will Campbell, although at his pro day at LSU, did measure 33-inch arms instead of the 32, barely over 32 and a half that was at the combine. People say that the 33-inch, it's not just Will Campbell's arm length that leads him to not being an offensive tackle at the NFL level. In my opinion, it's his foot speed out on the edge. I don't think he's an offensive tackle, not just because of the arms. So I think that while some people will be like, wait, Will Campbell, I agree with you. Armand Membo is my top offensive lineman. I think he is a pure offensive tackle, and I think he would be a good fit for the Patriots. For me, I think I would go Travis Hunter here, though. I think even with Stefon Diggs, I think you want to support your rookie quarterback as best as possible. You go Travis Hunter, even if he's a full-time wide receiver. I'm perfectly fine with that. So I'm with you there, but I think we both agree Stefon Diggs, coming off an ACL in his 30s, should not preclude the Patriots from taking a good wide receiver.
No, they still can go that route, but at the same time, also to help develop Drake May, you need to fix his offensive line,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
as much as they need playmakers, they also need to fix their offensive line. So they could go either route, whoever they feel better about at that position. So I could see either of our picks being accurate.
Yeah, I hear you there. If Travis Hunter falls out of the top 5, though, or falls out of the top 4, the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be so happy. And folks, I'll be honest with you, I just can't mock a situation where that happens, but Michelle can, and she'll tell you about it. All right, let's cap off today's mini mock draft edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. I had Cam Ward going number 1 to the Titans, Shedeur Sanders going number 2 to the Browns, Abdul Carter going number 3 to the Giants, Travis Hunter going number 4 to the New England Patriots. Michelle had Cam Ward number 1 to the Titans, Abdul Carter number 2 to the Cleveland Browns, Shedeur Sanders going number 3 to the New York Giants, and then Armand Membo, the offensive tackle out of Missouri, going to the New England Patriots, which leaves pick number 5. And Michelle, I'll let you explain why Travis Hunter to the Jaguars is such a great fit, even if it's going to make me a little bit nauseous.
Listen, yeah, if Travis Hunter makes it to them at number 5, they're going to be sprinting to that podium to make this pick because they need at corner, right? So if they want to play in both corner and wide receiver, cool. And then adding him with Brian Thomas Jr., all of a sudden you have, I mean, this is very, very exciting for Trevor Lawrence, who they're paying so much money to, right? And Trevor Lawrence has not at all earned this contract that he's got. And he is not putting up the production for $53 million a year or $55 million a year he makes.
Sure.
So just keep adding weapons until it finally hits, right? And adding Travis Hunter with Brian Thomas Jr., I think just makes so much sense. They traded away Christian Kirk, so they no longer have him. Evan Ingram, a big target guy in that offense. Yep. He signed with the Broncos in free agency, so they need more weapons too. Travis Hunter makes so much sense. And again, like I don't know if Hunter will fall to 5, but if he does, I cannot, the Jaguars have to take him.
Yeah, absolutely. Like they should jump all over that. That would be huge. Imagine having Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter to build around with Trevor Lawrence. I mean, that's like a, maybe not quite that, but that's like a mini Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase situation there. So I'm with you, and I agree that would be a good pick for Jacksonville. It would be a bit of a nightmare for my Tennessee Titans, but nonetheless, could happen. I do want to consider another offensive weapon, though, for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it may sound a little crazy, but my guy Tony Wiggins, the barber from the Barbershop, afternoon edition of Locked On NFL, talked about Ashton Jeanty for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Dude, Ashton Jeanty can play. And I know we shouldn't think about taking a running back because the Jaguars have 2 guys that people believe are capable, especially now that offensive line has begun being fixed and will continue to be worked on and continue to be made a priority like it should have been the last 5 years that I've been screaming at and nobody wanted to listen. But nonetheless, the Jags have already made it very, very clear that that's exactly their number 1 priority, and they're going to lean on that and lean into it, making that offensive line something special. This vision just came over me. Trevor, BTJ behind a better offensive line with a 20-carry running back that is not built like a dude that's going to get hurt. He's like a fire hydrant, right? With spikes on it. Breaks tackles, strong build, doesn't have that kind of durability, the body where durability is a concern. Can't get a clean hit on him. I watched the tape last night and I could not stop watching it. He can play. I think he impacts, I'm going to use some big names again. I think he impacts the team kind of the way Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley do, and to a certain extent, Jahmyr Gibbs, because he gives your entire team an identity.
Strong words from Tony there. It would be a shock with Trevor, Trevor. I always get him and his brother mixed up now. Trevor Etienne, Travis Etienne, his brother Trevor. Yeah, his brother Trevor out of Georgia. Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby. But I'm sorry, ETN has not shown that he's reliable enough and a good enough player, and Tank Bigsby is a solid committee running back, but neither of those guys are good enough to pass on an Ashton Jeanty if you really do feel like that's going to take your team to the next level. Personally, I would probably give Will Campbell to the Jaguars to continue to fortify that offensive line along the interior, with Walker Little outside, Anton Harrison outside. Get yourself Will Campbell. He can play inside for now if you need him to kick to offensive tackle. I think that he could do that for Jacksonville if they needed, but I would probably go Will Campbell and pass on Ashton Jeanty. But interesting pairing for sure.
It's interesting, and I get how good Ashton Jeanty is, and he could make it very exciting for this offense in the future. But I mean, it's hard to give a guy, he mentioned the 20 carries a game, right, for a running back. It's hard to give that when your defense stinks. So, I mean, the Jaguars defense was real bad last year, right?
Yeah.
They have to fix that up too. I just think going running back would be reckless at number 5 overall, but bad teams make bad decisions. So maybe they'll do it.
Yeah, well, it would at least be potentially fun for fantasy purposes, because Liam Cohen, after what he did with Bucky Irving last year, which is another reason why would you take Ashton Jeanty at number 5 when you have a guy who just made Bucky Irving look like prime Barry Sanders? And it's a great running back class. I would rather have Travion Henderson in the top 40 than take Jeanty at 5 if I'm the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's why I don't get it for the Raiders either. We want to talk about the next couple of picks. You know, let me ask you this. If the Jets and the Raiders are there and Shedeur Sanders is on the board, would you take him or would you pass and go to something else?
The Jets for sure. The Raiders, I guess, are good now with Geno Smith, right?
True. I guess.
But the Jets, they have Justin Fields, but I definitely think you take Shedeur Sanders and then you have them compete this offseason. If Sanders isn't ready to go, you have him sit for a little bit. But yeah, if I'm the Jets, I'm taking Sanders if he's there.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. But either way, it's going to be so interesting to see how the top of the draft unfolds. We'll be talking about it a ton as we continue through here and get to the draft and get closer to April. It's almost that time. It's crazy how fast the offseason is going. But that's going to do it for us today here. I am your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, with my co-host, the Data Queen, Michelle Majuk. As we tell you every episode, thanks for tuning in.
Bye, y'all.